All right. My name is Laura Barr. Welcome to the podcast Growing Good Humans. I am the owner and founder of Emerging Educational Consulting, and our company provides one-to-one mentorship for students and parents from the beginning to end of the college application process. When I talk about what I do, I think about my phrase, I wake up every day to grow good humans. And what better way to do that than to provide education to impact and transform? So today we are so lucky to again have Liane Crane, who is an expert on all things financial for college. And I am so grateful for you. And I know our field is very grateful for you because it's hard enough just to be an expert on what we are experts in. And you bring this level of information to us that I just don't think we can manage on top of everything else. So Liane, why don't you introduce yourself and then I'll just let you dive in. Today, the reason you're here is because we had a past podcast a couple months ago and we knew the FAFSA was on its way. It was supposed to be one date, it got pushed to another date, and now it's the talk of the town. So we really just want to hear from you what your tips and tricks and anything else. I'm just going to let you go, and if there's anybody who has questions, I'll chime in. But first introduce yourself and then go play.
Great. Thanks, Laura. And thanks again, obviously, for having me. And as you know, the cost of colleges are really moving up there. So I do think bringing that financial component into the admissions is getting to be more of a priority than what it used to be. So I'm the owner of the College Dollar. I've been in the college consulting world for over 14 years now, and probably the last 6 or so have focused solely on the financial end of it, personal and professional reasons. And I just couldn't read another essay again. So God bless you all for doing that. So I'm just going to go over a couple things about the FAFSA. And as Laura said, if you have questions, feel free, I can try and answer them. So for the 24-25 new, better FAFSA, it is open now. It did open for a few hours on December 31st, as was required by law. And I think it's almost open full time now. So through the first couple of weeks here of January, it's been open and closing and open and closing. And there's been almost 1 million, I think, parents trying to rush and get it in. But I think the first thing to mention is that even if you do submit it now or want to get it in now, the information is not going to be sent to the colleges until February. So we were kind of thinking February 1st. I just heard today that might be the middle of February, and it probably is going to be a range. So I doubt every school is going to get it on the same date. So again, there's not a whole big hurry to submit. I know everybody wants to get the checklist, it's done and sent. But again, don't hurry. I would use probably, February 1st is a good guideline to get it in. I still have a couple clients that are not listening to me and trying to submit, and they're still getting some glitches in there. So, but I have had a lot of people that kind of went through it, submitted, and are all good to go. So I think it kind of depends the time of day and your circumstances, whether those glitches come out or not. Just kind of to reiterate, the deadline for the FAFSA, believe it or not, for the 24-25 FAFSA is actually June of 2025. So again, there's not this big hurry, but there are different college and state deadlines. And obviously, if you're new and you're going to be a college freshman in the fall, you want those financial aid packages so you can decide. So just be wary that there isn't a deadline that you're up against for that FAFSA other than wanting the package to make a college choice. If you haven't gotten your FSA ID, now is the time to do that. It does take 3 days to be verified. So if you get your FSA ID today, it'll take 3 days for you to get that confirmation email and then be able to sign the FAFSA. You can log in with it into the FAFSA. You just won't be able to sign it until that verification process is complete. There is a little address and phone glitch in there if you're just getting a new FSA ID. So if you run into that, send me a quick email and I can help you work through that. And all of that is done. You can Google FSA ID or go to studentaid.gov to work on those. I think the biggest thing that is new, and this is really for parents who have done the FAFSA in the past, but it would be the FAFSA is now 2 different components. So there is a student component and a parent component, and they don't connect. So in the past, if you've done the FAFSA, you know it starts with the student section, the demographics and financials, and then goes on to the parents. And this year, it's entirely separate. So when a student logs in and completes theirs and submits it, then the parent logs in, completes it, and submits it. So I saw a lot of Facebook and Reddit boards where the parent was trying to find the student section, and she was going crazy trying to find the student section. She won't find it with her login. It's entirely separate. So I think that's probably the biggest change if you're redoing a FAFSA. And then just as a reminder, some parents unaware, you do need to complete the FAFSA every year. So make sure you do write down those FSAID and 5 security questions. You are dealing with the government. So to reset is a process. So you want to make sure you keep track of all of those security questions. So some concerns that are coming up with the FAFSA, the changes are still going on. So one of the reasons I'm kind of hoping that people wait another probably week or so is that they are doing changes. They don't anticipate anything happening to your information while they make these changes, but they can't 100% guarantee that. So if you have some patience left in this admissions process and can hold off another week, I would kind of recommend that. The one thing that they haven't been able to get to work, as of when I checked over the weekend, is if parents don't have a social security number. So new this year was supposed to be an easier way for a parent that didn't have a social security number to be able to submit the FAFSA. But as of right now, that would still have to be done paper form, not online. And hopefully that will be fixed too. Now the FAFSA code. So when your student goes into their section, once they complete their demographics and financial, then they can then list up to 20 colleges. And each college has a FAFSA code, which is how it determines they get your students' information. So there are some nuances to this. A couple colleges have been reporting that the FAFSA dropdowns have wrong FAFSA codes. And some of the colleges have also been abbreviated or truncated in their information. And being a student, we're not entirely sure if they go to pick a University of New York school, they're going to read through all the abbreviations and know they have exactly that school, University of Florida, any kind of the state systems, California. So I would recommend, if you have the wherewithal or if your student has some time, go actually to the college website, just Google Denver State College and find the FAFSA code that way and just double check, especially if you're only applying to 4 or 5, it won't take much time at all. But the last thing you want is for your FAFSA not to be submitted to the correct college and you're waiting for the financial aid package. The other thing is that if you are a family that believes you will get some state aid or have a lower income, the connection from the FAFSA to those state forms, there's about 6 colleges that state form will not automatically transfer from the FAFSA, and you will need to do that separately. So you can just Google your state higher education department. It should have the list right there to make a login and get state funding. The other thing that you might notice or need to be aware of is that the FAFSA is now pulling in the entire tax return that you need to agree to if you want any financial aid for your student. So it used to be called the IRS DRT, which we're kind of hard at getting rid of acronyms, so we'll probably be calling it that for a while, but it's really the DDX, Direct Data Exchange. So when you first log in as a parent or student, you will kind of see this information to read, and you need to allow that in order for your student to receive financial aid. I believe it messaged you about 3 times throughout the process to just kind of reminding you that that's happening. And one of the biggest things I'm seeing with parents is that, believe it or not, you can submit the FAFSA without signing it. And what this means is that you do not want your financial information to be pulled in, and your student will then only be eligible for the federal student loans. So no grants, work study, things like that. So you do have to be aware on the very last page, there's like a continue button where you need to sign, and then it's being submitted. So just be aware of that little caveat right now. And then once you submit, your student really should submit before you and then the parent do it. And then the student's email will receive your student aid index, or what we know as the EFC. They will receive that email. And if you don't receive that within 3 days, again, I'd probably say call me or chat with FSA and find out kind of where the glitch is in that and what's happening. But you should receive that information. So a couple of the FAFSA changes, if you have completed it before, if you're just filling it out the first time, these aren't changes to you, just kind of general information. Definitely fewer questions. This is really great. I've gone through a couple of them, and it is definitely a much easier form and not so many gray areas, which I think is great for everybody. Divorce situations are might be a little tricky. So the FAFSA is now calling people who submit a FAFSA contributors. And so in certain different households now, there may be somebody required to contribute that is not the student and not the one parent, biological parent, that is going to do the FAFSA. So if the parent is remarried, or possibly the other biological parent may need to be a contributor. And when they do this, it is not required for them to pay for college or to pull in their taxes. So that's kind of a little tricky. I know when I did my daughter's, she submitted hers, I submitted mine. And at the end of mine, it asked for my husband's information. He never got an email and never was required to be a contributor. But I think sometimes our answers, it's kind of a skip logic program in FAFSA. So something might trigger the need for that other contributor. So just be aware of that. Child support is now an asset, not an income, which is a benefit if you are receiving child support. Untaxed income, there's not a question. That's pulled in right from your tax return. That was always difficult to calculate. Family farms and small businesses now have a question on there. So if you do have a family farm or small business, again, I think it'd be easier just to email or call me. I don't want to take up the whole time doing that. It doesn't apply to everyone, but it is now a question that didn't used to be on there. This was actually a change last year, but good news, people still ask this. Grandparents' 529 money is not listed on the FAFSA. It does not affect future financial aid. So that was a really good change that happened. Only the 529 that you have in an account for the student you're filling out the FAFSA needs to be reported as an asset. If you have 529s for other siblings, those do not need to be reported any longer on the FAFSA. And again, kind of that skip logic, when your income is about below 60,000, there will be no asset questions that pop up. So if you don't see those and you have a lower adjusted gross income, that would be why. And just a couple hiccups still going through on the FAFSA. Retirement rollovers can pull from the tax return, but don't necessarily at the college end come through as a rollover. So if for some reason you kind of forgotten about that, because remember this is a 2-year tax return look back, and you did a rollover, I would definitely email the financial aid office of the college and let them know to make sure they hadn't include that as income. The first week or so, there was a green room in the FAFSA. If you were put into this green room waiting for it to open up, I would just log off. I don't think that's happening anymore, but I wouldn't sit around and wait to do that. Again, there's no hurry, and you're not sure what they're changing while you're waiting in that room. And I think the most common errors still in the FAFSA, we should have some updates after everyone completes the 24-25, but be sure your Social Security number is correct. Your current marital status, so if that has changed from 2022 when you filed a joint tax return and now maybe are not married, it does go by your current marital status on there. People forget to include the income from a step parent if you have remarried. And there is a question on the FAFSA about household size. So when you complete your tax return, most of us are including dependents, so younger children, how many dependents we have. But when you complete the FAFSA, they are allowing you to change that. Let's say you have your mother-in-law living with you, or a nephew who now you're a custodian of. Those can change the household number that are not on the FAFSA on your tax return, but you do want to report that for the FAFSA. And I think those are probably kind of the basics. I know I talked really fast. See if there's any questions on that, or Laura, you have questions or something I can?
Yeah, that's great. I think we have a couple of questions coming through. I know one of the questions has to do with shifts from students with disabilities. Intellectual disabilities also, I'm just not sure what exactly question to ask, because I'm not sure what it was before and what it is now. But the word on the street is now students with disabilities can apply to the FAFSA, where in the past, was that not true?
It wasn't that they couldn't. It was dependent on the school. It's usually dependent on the school, actually, that they're applying to, if they take federal funds or not. So I would say, again, if they can't find the research on their own, reach out to me. I can get them in the right direction. But that's such a broad topic, depending on the disability and the school they're planning to go to.
Okay, that's very helpful. The other question I have, I think I know the answer, but I'm just going to be clear, is, there's 11 states that have civil union marriages and then a federal marriage, like a regular marriage. So for the step parent piece, if the marriage took place as a civil union, is that a step parent?
If they are living in the same house and they're using the same income, then I believe the FAFSA considers that to be a step parent. Yes.
Because the federal, people who are civil union do not have to give federal. They don't combine. What's the language? Federal.
Yeah,
they don't
federally.
Tax.
Yeah.
So anyway, we don't have to answer that. We can come back to that, because again, I'm having a hard time even asking the question. I also wanted to get a sense of if students have already applied and made mistakes, how are those mistakes fixed?
So if you've submitted, you'll need to wait at least 3 to 5 days. Once you submit, your FAFSA is in process review mode. So in order to make changes, you would need to wait for that review mode to be complete, those 3 to 5 days, and then you can log back in. You can't log in during a review time. And then you could go in and make the changes and submit again. Some of those, depending on when and what change it is, you may need to reach out to the college to let them know you've updated something.
Okay. The other question is related. Oh my gosh, I just lost it. Darn it.
Oh, that's okay. But I'm going to tell you, for the civil union, I think I'm going to go back to, I know because the partnerships aren't legal in the federal government, I think the original thought would be that you could put that in the household number. So that's where that would come in. And if there's no joint tax return, then it would just be the one parent's income.
Okay, that's kind of was my hunch, but I'm sure we probably have to check again. It's always like check with the institution.
Yeah, I'm always kind of like in those situations, because some states are different, some agreements or the legalities of the relationship can be different. So sometimes it's always best to do it per case.
That's great. Oh, I know what my question was. It has to do with the loan, subsidized, not subsidized, 7,500. Like, you're not going to qualify. Is it worth it or not? I get this question all of the time. Like, people say, I'm not going to fill it out because I'm not going to qualify anyway. And then I say, well, you might not qualify anyway, but you may want to have access to that loan. And then what is the interest rate? When do they have to pay it? What are the options for the loan piece?
Yes. So now the FAFSA, I guess we can say, made it a little easier for us. So if you feel you're not going to get any financial aid, you can go in and complete the FAFSA. And if you don't sign it, but submit it as a parent, then the student is only eligible for the federal student loans. Your information from the IRS is not transferred to the college. So that's one easier way to do that. And then once they do that, on the financial aid package, it will be listed that your student is eligible. Now, if you're not applying for need, your federal student loan will all be unsubsidized. So interest will accrue from date of disbursement. So the need-based part of loans is when the government subsidizes the loan and pays the interest. And freshmen are allowed $5,500 maximum, sophomores $65,000, and then juniors and seniors a maximum of $75,000. Now there is an extra 4,000 in there, but I won't confuse you all because most of the time that's what the average student is able to take out. And if you're going to do that, I would say definitely don't hurry and submit the FAFSA. You're just overloading a very stressed financial aid department. And I would do it once you decide which school you're going to attend. So if you decide April 15th, then you can email them. If you decide May 1st, just email the one school you're attending saying we're submitting the FAFSA for student loans, and then submit.
Great. Another thing that keeps occurring is a misunderstanding around, is it required or not required for merit? And
yes.
it feels like there's just so much misinformation about that. So any comments about, is it required?
So the FAFSA, by definition, is a free application for federal student aid. So if we go by that term, then no, it should not be required for any merit aid, because merit aid 90% of the time is based on the criteria of the student. So with that being said, there shouldn't be that cause. Now, because we don't deal in black and white and 100% in the complex college finance world, if someone wanted to double check that, I would call the college as you're applying, check with the admissions office to ensure that they don't require the FAFSA for the application to be considered complete, and therefore will review it for admission. So I think I've heard about it once in my 14 years, but I would never want it to be the school my client is applying to and they don't submit the FAFSA for that reason.
I definitely ask my families to reach out directly to the school, because I don't want to be responsible for getting it wrong at their most favorite college. And it feels like everything's so dynamic right now that it could even change without us even knowing.
And that doubles for the CSS profile too, Laura. I would always double check. Again, it's an application for free aid, and the CSS, again, is, a request for some need-based aid. But you want to make sure that if you're not filling it out, usually those 3 caveats, you want to make sure it's not required for an application to be complete. You want to make sure that if it's not submitted freshman year, you're not allowed to complete it the next couple of years. So if something in your family finances change, are you okay with maybe not being able to ask the college for help? And then,
way, because what you just said was, if you don't apply freshman year and then you need money sophomore year, it doesn't work that way. Like because
some colleges, and most of them, will post that on their website and say, freshman year FAFSA and CSS are required as a baseline if you want financial aid anytime during the 4 years the student is here. Most of the time that is written on the website. They want parents to know that so they can get that information that first year.
Okay, here's a question. What are the implications, if any, on the parents who take out federal student loans? But can parents even take out the loans? Isn't it a student loan?
So parents' federal student loans are called what we know as Parent Plus loans. They're all called federal direct loans, and there's different types. Student loans are for the student, Parent Plus loans for the parent. There's grad loans and things like that. So yes, if a parent completes a FAFSA, they can take a Parent Plus loan. So if you are married and Laura, you submit the FAFSA, you may take a Parent Plus loan for your child. If your husband wants to take a Parent Plus loan in his name, because Parent Plus loans are per person, he would have to get an FSA ID in order to take out a loan in his name. And there are some strategies that you can work through on which parent it might be best to take out a Parent Plus loan versus the other.
That's really helpful. Any thoughts on loan repayment by the government in the coming years? Is it going to happen? Is it not? Like, what are the thoughts on what's the scoop?
Yeah, loan repayment is going to be a tricky one. I think the whole system really does need to be overhauled, but that's probably not going to happen for a little bit. I don't think we're ever going to see a blanket amount of loan forgiveness. I think Biden has done a great job at trying to help the most hurt by student loans as far as capitalizing interest and not being able to pay, and the servicers doing forbearance and deferment when they shouldn't have. Bless you. So I think it's moving along in a better direction, but I don't think there will ever be a blanket forgiveness for loans. I think part of it, well, I can get on my soapbox, so we'll do that another time. But yeah, if you take out the loan, you should pay it. And there's different forgiveness programs and income-based repayments to help people to repay their loan. Yes, the government did some things wrong, so I think they're trying to make amends for that now.
Great. Well, we are about to be finished. I don't know if anyone in our group has any more questions, any last questions. Meanwhile, Liane, why don't you just tell us how people can reach you if they want to have your support and services? I can speak for Liane from our own family systems. We have used you and might have to use you again for the Parent Plus loan support that is down the pipe.
Yes.
So give us that quick scoop and then we'll sign off.
Sure. So my website is thecollegedollar.com, and on there is my Calendly link. I do free 15 minutes. If you want to find out more about my services, you can schedule that. If you just have a quick FAFSA question and in your mind may be quick, I don't mind answering those via email. If they're pretty involved, I'll let you know. But my email is Liane, Liane, @thecollegedollar.com. So
Great.
Thank you again, Laura.
Thank you so much, Liane.
We'll talk soon.
Without you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.